Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for Cinementalist.com. My name's Andy. Sitting next to me is Floki, our bearded dragon mascot. And sitting opposite me is Liam. How's it going, dude?
Yes, I'm well, chap. How about you?
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Goody gumdrops.
Due to a bit of a scheduling mix-up this week, we're recording on a Sunday, so that's always weird.
Yes, just a little bit.
It's actually, we were just talking about the fact that it's probably the first nice day this year, actually. It's lovely and sunny outside.
It is. It's a beautiful day.
Beautiful spring day, and we're sat in here with the curtains closed trying to pretend it's 9 o'clock.
Indeed, yes.
Because we're creatures of the night, really.
Yes.
We don't really work during the day.
After, seeing as it is a lovely Sunday, I think after we've wrapped up here, I'm going to do the English thing and probably stroll around getting pissed.
You go and sit in a pub garden somewhere.
Exactly right.
It is the English way.
It is indeed.
Yes, your forebearers will be very, very pleased. But yes, as usual, we've got a feature-packed podcast this week. A bit of film news to start off with. Jason Momoa, haven't heard from him for a while. Jason Momoa joins the Fast and Furious franchise, and that's it.
Of course he does.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a requirement that if anybody can get cast in the Fast and Furious franchise, as long as your arms are big enough. I think that's the defining thing. You have to have huge arms. But Jason Momoa does, and therefore, the inevitable has happened. 10 movies in, including Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. The Fast and Furious franchise has featured a revolving door of action stars that has included Idris Elba, Jason Statham, Charlize Theron, and perhaps most controversially at this point, Dwayne Johnson. Instead of returning for any future Fast and Furious projects, Johnson is focusing on the DC comic movies Black Adam and his various projects for streaming services. As it turns out, however, Vin Diesel, director Justin Lin, and Universal Pictures have enlisted the help of another DC Comics star, as Jason Momoa is now in talks to join the Fast and Furious family as the franchise's next big villain. Momoa is the 10th movie's first big casting announcement, and there might be more, as filming won't start until later in the spring of 2022, aiming for a May 19th, 2023 release date. 2 weeks after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 on 5th of the 5th, 2023, and 1 week before Disney's remake of The Little Mermaid on 5th, 29, 2023. Those dates are all backwards, of course, because it's an American article. You know what I mean. Jason. We like Jason Momoa.
I do like Jason Momoa. I mean, he does quite inevitably get typecasted because of his immense size. But I'm into, seeing him as a villain would be, I'd like to see him in more villainous roles because I think it's a little bit simplistic and not entirely accurate to call Khal Drogo a villain. I don't really think he's a villain.
Yeah, started out as one and then quickly became
something
he's
like
else.
Definitely, he's got like a lot of moral grey area there, but in most stuff you see like Braven and what was that one with the ridiculous twist, Sweet Girl, I think he's usually the good guy, and obviously, in C he plays quite a noble character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to be interested to see Momoa. I mean, Momoa's definitely got bad guy chops, so it'd be nice to see him in more of that, but the fact that it's another Fast and Furious movie is not really piquing my excitement, I've got to be honest.
No, it's one of the biggest franchises in the world at the moment and one of the most boring.
Yeah, so I mean, Fast 9 had some hilarious moments that
I do remember you saying you found it funny.
It was very entertaining because of how fucking absurd it is, but it's not memorable. It's just, I just wish they'd stop bloody doing them now. I mean, the first Fast and Furious film, you watch it and you go, yeah, that was a relatively entertaining, action-packed 90 minutes or whatever it was, and then you kind of forget about it. But, well, I mean, if you do. But seems that the rest of the world thinks the opposite. So,
well, it's no surprise either that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has left the franchise because apparently him and Vin Diesel very famously did not get on. Yeah. In the slightest. I can't remember which Fast and the Furious movie it is because there's so bloody many of them. But a lot of people were pointing out there's a scene between Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel, where it's very obvious that they've been CGI edited in for the over the shoulder shots and the back one too, which is really, really funny. Apparently, they literally couldn't stand to be in the same room as each other on that franchise. There's two gigantic egos and muscles running into each other, I think. But there you go.
Well, I mean, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I'm not really sure what the current status on it is, but I think he's also going to be busy annoying me and many other people by taking the lead in a remake of Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, has he been cast in that?
I believe
I
so.
haven't seen that.
Yeah, I think they're working on it, and I think he is going to be Jack Burton, or this film's analogue of Jack Burton, and I'm very, very not happy with that news. Just especially stuff with Kurt Russell, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think saying it's fucking Kurt Russell is enough of a justification. Just leave that alone.
Wasn't the great thing about Big Trouble in Little China as well? It was sort of the the practical effects and the sort of its time kind of stuff, which they're now going to completely CGI.
Yeah.
And so he's going to lose all the charm. No one was watching it really for the story.
It's a lovely little slice of punchy 80s bubblegum. You've got the Carpenter flair in there with, sort of good effects, as you say, and a great score. And Kurt Russell doing his magic thing that he does very well. It's absolutely perfect the way it is. It's
a charming film.
It is, yeah.
The new one, I've yet to see a big blockbuster remake that manages to do charming. But there you go.
And he also, Walking Tall as well. I mean, the original Walking Tall with Joe Don Baker, it's nothing approaching a masterpiece, but it's got that 70s grit to it. And they remade that with The Rock. And it's just like, oh, God, the dearth of original ideas. Piss off.
Yeah, I'm kind of okay with Dwayne Johnson as an actor. I think he's put in some decent performances, but I think we're all oversaturated now. I feel oversaturated.
I think he's at his best when he takes the piss out of himself. Be Cool was a diabolically bad film, the sequel to the Fast Furious Get Shorty. But he was funny in it, and he's also funny in the Jumanji films. I think when he does self-deprecation, I think that's when he really, really shines.
Yeah.
All this brooding Hulk stuff is just boring.
I quite liked him in Jungle Cruise. It was a surprisingly decent film.
Oh yeah, I remember you. I haven't actually seen that yet, but it sounded like a good laugh.
It's essentially a Jumanji kind of rip-off, but it worked absolutely fine, and the gags kind of landed, and it was much better than I was expecting. It was like sort of a Disney thrill ride of a film, which makes sense because it's based on a Disney thrill ride.
Yeah.
He can turn in a decent performance. I feel like I'm seeing too much of him.
Sure. No, I can get behind that.
What have we got next? Oh, yes. Article from Variety here. Mark Wahlberg, my favorite, and Mel Gibson movie Father Stew sells to Sony. Sony Pictures has acquired Father Stew, a true-life drama starring Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson. Rosalind Ross wrote and directed the faith-based movie, which will be released in theaters on Good Friday, April the 15th. Father Stew tells the story of boxer-turned-priest Father Stuart Long and his inspiring journey from self-destruction to redemption. Along with Wahlberg, who plays the title character, and Gibson, the film features Jackie Weaver and Teresa Ruiz. Father Stew's journey from troublemaker to clergyman was inspiring to many, including me, said Wahlberg. Rosie has done an incredible job capturing the essence of who he was and how he affected the people he met. I hope that with this film we keep his spirit alive and continue his good works. Wahlberg will serve as producer with Stephen Levinson and Jordan Foss. Executive producers include Mikey Lee, Colleen Camp, Patrick Peach, and Tony Grazia. Father Stew is the feature directorial debut of Ross, who is reportedly dating Gibson. Well, I mean, Marky Mark. Let's talk about Marky Mark.
Wahlberg.
Marky Mark for a minute. He's a very Christian man. I know that's about him.
Well, I was aware that Mel Gibson was a devout Roman Catholic. I wasn't actually aware that Marky Mark was a Christian.
I was sort of interested in this, in the fact that, based on a true story, obviously the guy had quite an interesting life and all that kind of stuff. I wonder, given that you've got two people that I'm not going to say they proselytize or whatever, but they mention their religion quite a lot, whether it's going to be one of those. So I get a little bit worried by the term faith-based movie, because that often means sappy and insipid.
Whenever anyone says that, do you ever see any of the God's Not Dead films?
No.
With fucking Kevin Sorbo and Melissa Joan Hart. I mean, they are hilariously awful, riddled with logical fallacies and bullshit, but usually a lot of Christian-based films are of that dog shit tier.
Yeah.
So not all of them. I mean, Carl Theodor Dreyer made some masterpieces that were rooted in religion, as did Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue you find Christianity in a lot of
absolutely.
A lot of movies.
The Seventh Seal is essentially a Christian film, and it's a fucking masterpiece. I mean, but a lot of contemporaneous faith-based films, they're just really bad.
Yeah. Well, I'll be interested to see. I'm hoping it's going to be an interesting character piece, and I've never been particularly big on Marky Mark, but
I think that I've always kind of liked him. I think that he has something about him, but I know that you really don't like him.
Provided he doesn't, play that usual fast-paced, swears a lot. Yeah, Joe. I mean, I keep seeing him do the same character again and again. What I'm hoping for here is, given that he's playing a boxer turn into a priest, that there might be more nuance there.
He's good.
I'm sure he's capable.
I know I've waffled at you about it before, but he's good in the 2014 remake of The Gambler. He's the lead role in that, and he plays sort of like a life-hating, nihilistic professor, and it's very, very different from his usual tough guy roles, and I think he actually does pretty damn good in it. So you should check that one out. I think it's quite underrated, that one.
Cool stuff. You've been given complete approval, by the way, from Jared Leto, because Jared Leto says, it's okay not to like my House of Gucci performance. Isn't that nice? He's giving you permission not to like it. This is an article from filmnews.co.uk. Jared Leto has insisted it is okay if people didn't like his performance in House of Gucci. The 49-year-old actor has received a mixed reaction to his portrayal of Paolo Gucci in the film, but admitted he never reads reviews, so the only thing that matters is he had a blast making the movie and is happy just to have sparked a reaction. He told Screen Daily, I can imagine the reaction because it's a big swing. I don't look at reviews, I don't look at critics or read comments, but I tried my very best. Paolo is the best I can do. If you don't like the work, that's okay. I had a blast playing it, I dug in as deep as I could. It's also that thing of if you're not pissing people off, then you're doing something wrong. As an actor, if you want to put a dent in things, you've got to break things a bit. And not everyone's going to understand that. So if that's happening, then that's great.
I just think, you know,
could he get any more condescending,
well,
by the way?
Not only that, but I also think that I believe that Lady Gaga is currently engaging in an Oscar campaign because she really, really wants, she's really pushing hard. She wants an Oscar for that one. I just think House of Gucci, I didn't, you know, when I reviewed it, if I recall, I didn't absolutely 100% slate it, but it is, it's a messy film and it's not a particularly good or memorable film. And I, you know, as far as Oscars go, I think the only Ridley film that we should be talking about for any kind of Oscar that deservedly is The Last Duel. That's the only one we should be talking about. The House of Gucci doesn't really deserve anything. So, and as far as, you know, it's okay not to like, of course it's okay not to like your performance. You're not the fucking arbiter of that, you dickhead.
I do reject this whole thing of if you're not pissing people off, then you're doing something wrong. Like he's some kind of out there performance artist, you know?
No, he's just an arsehole.
If you don't like my performance, essentially what he's saying is you don't get it. You don't get what I was trying to do. And that's fine. If you don't understand what I'm trying to do, if you're not clever enough to understand Jared Leto's acting talent, then that's your problem, not his.
Fuck off. Do you know the problem with Jared Leto? He thinks that he's Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes, he does.
And he isn't. Because we already have Joaquin Phoenix. And well, number one, Joaquin Phoenix is actually talented.
Well, he goes on as well, because Jared Leto loves to talk about himself. He said, method acting, staying in character, I just reject those terms because they've been perverted by a bunch of morons who don't know what they're talking about. For me, it's practical. It's my job to be the most prepared person on the planet and be ready to go. You don't want to step onto a set with Denzel Washington or Denis Villeneuve or Al Pacino and not be prepared. I enjoy disappearing into the part. There's nothing strange about it. What's strange is people's interpretation of my art. Everyone has a method. I mean, the problem is, Jared, is that method acting and whatever method you end up going for, whatever your thing is that gets you to that performance, no one really cares, to be honest. It's just a bit of trivia that we like to talk about afterwards. What people really care about is when they watch the thing, whether they believe your character. And in recent years, I haven't watched anything with Jared Leto where I've believed
the only thing I like with Jared Leto, the only performance of his that I genuinely like and think is good is his part as Paul Allen in American Psycho.
Yeah,
everything else, you know, Blade Runner 2049, The Little Things.
I liked him in Lord of War. I thought it was quite good.
Actually, no, that's fair. That's a very fair shout.
Because he was playing down. These days, because he now thinks he's a method actor, even though I love that line about, people a bunch of morons who don't know what they're talking about. That's you. You don't know what you're talking about. You're so far up your own ass. You have no idea what you're doing.
Not only is that riddled with, condescending hostility, his explanation there, what you just read out, he's not saying anything.
No.
That's just emptiness. There's no explanation or substance there whatsoever. He's just talking completely out of his rectum.
He thinks he's Robert De Niro. He thinks he's Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
That would be absolutely fine if he was delivering really great performances.
Let's see Jared Leto do anything that compares to Taxi Driver or Phantom Thread or something like that. Let's see him try and do that. He has not got the chops for it whatsoever.
This whole thing, it's also that thing of if you're not pissing people off, then you're doing something wrong. I mean, I don't think Robert De Niro was pissing anybody off when he played Travis Bickle. You know what I mean?
Or Jimmy Conway or Max Cady or Ace Rothstein.
Yeah. But apparently he was doing something wrong. Apparently that's his role not as an actor, by the way, as an artist. He does like to call himself an artist. In which case, produce some fucking art, man, because all I've seen recently is like pantomime over the top stuff. There's been so many reports of him being really genuinely difficult to work with because he's doing this, what he thinks is being a method actor, which is essentially being a dick to people because your character's a dick, which is definitely not the same fucking thing. I know he pisses me off, man. He really does piss me off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm totally fine with, not paying attention to critics, not paying attention to reviews and like fine. So good for you. No one has to pay attention to what we do. That's absolutely fine.
Do you know,
maybe if you did, you might actually be, maybe it's time to self-assess some of your performances and realize that actually in a couple of films, in quite a few big pictures, actually, you've been the point that's let the film down.
Yeah.
That's no good. Maybe you should rein that back.
I actually think with this attitude that he's going around with, I actually think he's really deserving of his epitaph reading something like, was never going to be the next Brando. End of. He would deserve that because he's a cock.
I mean, no one likes reading their reviews. No one likes receiving criticism. But the unfortunate fact is you kind of have to take a little bit of it because it's the only way you're going to get better. You have to be thick-skinned enough to take a little bit on the chin and go, you know what? I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. But maybe there's a bit of a point. Maybe I did push it too far.
That just goes with everything. There must have been people who told Scorsese that his very first draft of a short student film he made was rubbish.
Yeah.
In the same way that the first meal that Gordon Ramsay made, people said, well, that sucks. That's just, if you're going to be really, really ratty and let that get to you, you're not suited for whatever game you're going into.
One of the common things I hear from great actors, in interviews and everything else all the time, is that a lot of them can't stand watching themselves because all they see is the mistakes. They can't get into the character because they know what they were doing, and all they can see are the points where they think it could have been better because they're always refining themselves. I've got a funny feeling Jared Leto watches his own performance and goes, God, I was good in that.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm sorry, Jared. No one else thinks so.
Yeah, you do hear some actors like, as you say, they pinpoint their mistakes, and everyone else is like, "What are you talking about? You were flawless," and they just go, "No." So,
but that's what makes them brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah. If you don't have any modicum of self-doubt, then you're not going to be any good.
Yeah, well, he won't listen to this anyway because he doesn't listen to his critics. So we can say what we like about Jared Leto, and I'm prepared to say fuck him. Everything I read coming out of his mouth is just so pretentious.
Fuck Jared Leto.
And pretension and ego, not into it, really.
Fuck him in the asshole with a big rubber dick. Sorry, that's lifting from George Carlin a bit there, but
maybe somebody will link that to him. Maybe you'll listen to that. Anyways, Liam, I believe you have a couple of film reviews for us this week, as usual. Both big hitters, I believe. Where are you going to start?
Yes, well, I think we should probably start with The Matrix Resurrections. So this is the fourth installment in the Matrix franchise, famously directed by the Wachowski sisters, but this time it's only Lana Wachowski directing it. I think Lily just didn't want anything to do. I haven't really looked into why she didn't want anything to do with it, but she just didn't. So,
I seem to remember seeing something where she's been quite, I think they're valuing their privacy quite a lot, which is absolutely fair.
Yeah.
Didn't want to be involved for unspecified reasons.
Yeah, which is absolutely fair enough. So it's just the one Wachowski that's taken the helm. So you had The Matrix, and then you had The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. So now, yes, the fourth one, Resurrections, direct sequel to the third installment. And many, many people understandably were going, well, okay, how are you going to do this? Because certain arcs were definitively closed in the
very much so,
film.
yeah. Rather unsatisfyingly to boot as well.
At 100%. So it's a bit of a head scratcher. And upon seeing the trailer, it was even head scratchy. I watched the trailer and I was thinking, what the fuck are they doing here? But, give it a fair chance, settle down to watch it. And I'm going to try and tread very carefully here, but what I'm saying is I consider what I'm saying to just be outset stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I won't actually get into the nuts and bolts of it, but just the setup is essentially, so we're in, the present day, whichever, and Keanu Reeves, trusty old Keanu, is Mr. Thomas Anderson. And Thomas Anderson is a very successful video game developer. And he won lots of awards and amazing critical fanfare in 1999 for his groundbreaking video game called The Matrix.
My mind's boggling at the moment. Okay, yeah, sure.
And he regularly, even though Anderson is very, very well liked and applauded by colleagues and critics and just loads of general fans, he just seems to be on a bit of a downer in life. He goes to regular meetings with a therapist played by Neil Patrick Harris, and he complains of sort of depressive episodes and having very, very vivid dreams that are sort of taking on something of a psychotic psychosis as in the actual medical term for being unable to distinguish between reality and hallucination. He's in a real funk, Mr. Anderson. But he's just trying to get on with things. And he regularly goes to a cafe to meet up with a colleague for lunch. And there's a woman who comes in there, mother of three, who he keeps bumping into. And she goes by the name Tiffany, played by Carrie-Anne Moss. And her and Thomas have never met before, but they have a weird, vague feeling that they might have. And so she meets Thomas and they sort of start awkwardly chatting. While all of this is going on in the background, there's a team of, blue-haired, cyberpunky, hackery type people who are keeping a very vigilant eye on Mr. Anderson. Because they're very intrigued to get his help with something.
Okay, I see.
And I can't really go into any more than that because otherwise it would be massive spoiler territory.
The top of my head's kind of coming off right now because this is weird.
Well, and I think I was about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour into the film where I was genuinely thinking to myself, is this going to be a bait and switch where we've just been conned into watching a film where Thomas Anderson was literally just a game developer who came out with a video game called The Matrix, and we're watching his life fall apart with regards to psychiatric illness? Is it literally going to be just that? It's not. That's all. It isn't that. But what it is just, it's honestly just baffling. This is a batshit crazy film because, like I said at the start, everyone was pretty, were not satisfied, but everyone was of the notion, of the presumption that the Matrix narrative was definitively closed. But Lana Wachowski didn't seem to be happy with that, and so she wanted to, as the title implies, resurrect them. And the trouble is the whole film just really smacks of that fact because just none of it feels necessary. It's like she couldn't bear that two focal characters came to an end, so she had to just restart their narrative. And the explanation for this narrative restart is it's really dumb and quite hokey, and it doesn't really land. And I hate saying this because I like Keanu Reeves. I really like Keanu Reeves. I thought he was great in the first Matrix. I love him in Point Break. I love him in the Bill and Ted movies. A lot of people refer to Keanu as a wooden actor. I don't think he is. I actually think he's got something of a singular charisma about him, and I really like and buy him in a lot of stuff. However, I really got the feeling that during Resurrections, I think this was a phone-in performance because there are scenes in this where Keanu just looks and sounds like he's reading off a cue. He just has this several scenes where there's this stilted delivery, and it really feels like he just can't be bothered. Like it basically looks like he's doing Lana Wachowski a favor, and he's just like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll do this. And that, and just the absolute mad writing that just tries to force so many ideas for exposition in. It just ends up rendering what I think Lana was intending to be a highly emotive comeback for all these characters. It just makes it feel, phoned in, cash grab, sloppy. There's a lot of completely batshit set pieces that don't really make a lot of sense. As the further you get into the film, when they're explaining exactly what is at the root of what's going on and explaining, during certain setbacks, they're essentially telling the audience, they're telling and not showing the audience about how we're going to do this, this, and this, and you're just trying to process all this fucking information. And so they're just going, who wrote this script? Was it just Lana Wachowski, or did she have anyone abetting her with it? Because they need to go and get some refinement class or something, because this is just a complete fucking shambolic batshittery. Now, were there moments in the film that I did find kind of entertaining? Yes, there were. It's not I've dumped on it so far. It's not a boring film. It isn't. There's always something going. There's always some level of momentum. It's not a boring film, but it just makes little to no sense whatsoever.
So I have a question, and I'm worried that I'm going to push you into spoiler territory. So as usual, prepare to do your spoiler dance.
Okie dokie.
But my overriding thought is how much have they, obviously without giving specific examples, but how much have they essentially fucked with the canon? How much of this is, because the original Matrix universe, if you like, had a set of rules that it delivered over the course of the films. Are they changed now? Are they the same? Are they...
Yeah, that they are. They have been mutilated somewhat.
Oh, mutilated.
Well,
That's not a good word.
It does. Honestly, the specific scene where they explain like how this has come to be, given the events of Revolutions, I was just sat there going, "Oh, fuck off." That is absolutely absurd. It's like one of the oldest narrative devices in the book, and one of the reasons people never use it is because it's fucking stupid. And it was just, and they're bringing back people like, the Merovingian, the Frenchman from the, I think he was in the second one. He makes a cameo appearance.
Makes a lady come with a cake.
Yeah, Jada Pinkett Smith returns as, Niobe, I believe her name is. But it's Lana Wachowski doing lots and lots of heavy nods to the first film in the franchise, predominantly, which as I'd say it's welcome in comparison to, even though it's a direct sequel to Revolutions, it isn't very reference heavy to the second or third films. It's mostly referencing the initial film, the inaugural film, which is nice, I guess. But I was hoping for some emotional clouts to this. And it's in very short supply. I mean, was it Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who I enjoyed in the titular role of the most recent Candyman. He is essentially playing a computer program variant of Morpheus. And I like him as an actor, but I'm sorry, the lack of Lawrence Fishburne.
I was going to say, is that just a hand wave going, we couldn't get Lawrence Fishburne, so now...
I'm sorry, but we have a Matrix film. Yes, okay, Keanu and Carrie Ann are in it, but there's no Larry Fishburne and there's no Hugo Weaving. And I'm sorry, that is very, very disappointing indeed. I recall before I saw this film, I recall around Christmas, I was talking to a friend of mine who said he went and saw back-to-back. He went and saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and he saw The Matrix Resurrections. And he was like, "Oh, you got to see Spider-Man No Way Home. It's so fucking good." And I said, "Okay, what about The Matrix? What's that like?" And he goes, "Part your legs for me a little bit." And he mimed kicking me in the bollocks. And he said, "That's what it's like." And so I tried to go in as unbiased as possible, but I think he basically hits the nail on the head. This does not have this emotional resonance, this rousing sort of reunion air that it so desperately wishes to have. And yeah, Keanu's performance could have been a lot better. It was just so fucking unnecessary. And it's just, and as far as the Matrix goes, I love the first Matrix. I think it's absolutely great. And it should have just been that final shot of Neo flying into the air to the tune of Wake Up by Rage Against the Machine. That is the perfect bang.
Yeah, it really should have stopped.
Should have just left it there, because it should have just left it there. It was absolutely, there's nothing wrong with the first film. It's great. The rest of the franchise, it's just like, no point. No point. So never mind. Another one I've been looking forward to. This is Nightmare Alley. This is the latest film from the wonderful Guillermo del Toro. It's based on a novel from the mid-40s of the same title by William Lindsay Gresham. It was previously adapted in 1947. I admittedly haven't seen that version, but we're dealing with a classic noir material. It's one of the most, I think the 1947 version and the novel itself is celebrated as absolute god-tier noir art. And so, yeah, Del Toro has just delivered his adaptation. And this is the story of Stanton Carlyle, or Stan, as he mostly goes by, Bradley Cooper. As the film opens, we see him kind of sitting in a forlorn fashion around a house before he burns it to the ground and just sets off on travel by foot. And he eventually comes to a carnival somewhere in the Midwest of the United States. And he's sort of walking around, having a look at shit. And eventually he comes across Bruno, played by Ron Perlman, who is he's kind of like, he's the carnival strongman, but he also acts as the operations heavy. He's essentially the carnival bouncer. He like beats people up and throw them out if they're taking the piss. And he sees Bradley Cooper wandering around, and he's just like, you're shifty. Who the fuck are you? What do you want? And for about the first 20 minutes of the film, there's absolutely no dialogue from Bradley Cooper, which is an interesting sort of facet of it. But Bruno Ron Perlman essentially deduces that he's looking for work, or, you know, he wouldn't sneer at a penny or two. So he said, like, well, I can give you like something of a job here, helping to move shit around. And, you know, it's hard work, but, you know, you'll earn like a dollar a day or something like that. And this is obviously 1939. So that's not really that bad wedge for, you know, just what is effectively a labouring job with physical work, dollar a day, 1939. You know, it's kind of like
back in my day.
Yeah. It's,
food for a week.
It's not great, but you know, it's middling as opposed to complete shit. But so he just begins working at this carnival whilst sort of getting acquainted with people there. He meets one of the first people he meets is Xena, which is the stage name of a lady played by Toni Collette. And Toni Collette and her partner Pete David Strathern, they're a pair of what at the time was referred to as mentalism. So they're, I don't know what a lot of people in the US probably won't find it funny, but here, whenever like someone is referred to as a mentalist, 9 times out of 10 that usually means they're just a fucking lunatic. So here's someone referred to as a mentalist. That just generates some juvenile giggles for me.
It's like the guy you stay away from in a pub.
Yeah. You know, he's a mentalist means he's likely about to gloss you. But no, she's a mentalist as in the archaic term for a clairvoyant, a seer, a psychic, what have you. And her and her partner Pete, played by David Strathern, they're one of the biggest attractions at the carnival. Stanton gets acquainted with them and develops something of a friendly correspondence with them. He becomes close, and he kind of there's a lot of sexual tension between him and Xena, but it's not something that's really grappled with in the film. It's just Bradley Cooper is, as she says to him in the film, you know, Bradley Cooper is a guy who's easy on the eye. So, man, he's this wandering kind of laconic rogue, and so there's several women in this place who definitely taken notice to him. Apart from Xena, the other one is Molly, played by Rooney Mara. Now, Molly's thing is to sit in a chair, and she usually sits in, it's like a bikini, because her trick is essentially to be repeatedly zapped with electricity. And, like, you know, she's like the incredible, self-electrocuting girl.
Right, okay.
And Stanton and Molly, you know, Stanton takes a shine to Molly, and he really likes her, and they sort of begin to develop something of a romance. But Bruno Ron Perlman, he's calling to Stanton one day and says, "Look, I've known that girl since she came up to my knee. Her dad was a good friend of mine. I've always promised to look after her. If you do anything to hurt her, I'm gonna beat the living shit out of you." So Stanton's like, "Okay, fair enough." Among all this, he also meets the head honcho, the governor, as it were, of this carnival, is a man named Clem, played by Willem Dafoe. And in the opening scene of the film, you actually see Stanton, as he wanders in, he sees Clem being the master of ceremonies for what they call the Geek Show, where this emaciated kind of drunkard is sort of quivering in a hole, and he's being referred to as, you know, neither man nor beast, you know, he's something in between. He is a live chicken is put into this little enclosure he's in, and he bites the head off the chicken for the audience's gleeful entertainment. And at one point in the film, Clem says that the way they get a geek is to get hold of some traveling alcoholic, ply him with booze, and lace it with opium, and then just basically repeatedly threaten him with getting another geek so that he keeps doing these deplorable things because he doesn't want to lose the steady supply of booze. So you're in a world, you're in this place, this microcosm that's run by some very, very nasty and amoral people. They're basically, with a few exceptions, they really are just a bunch of fucking scumbags. And Stanton is an apex scumbag. And through his friendship with Xena and Pete, he learns the tricks of the trade with regards to mentalism. And he starts to find out that he's actually got the knack for it. He's got the knack for this parlor trickery. And he simultaneously plots for him and Molly to run away together. But he also thinks, oh, I've actually found something I'm good at. This could maybe get me far in terms of, you know, financial comfort. And somewhere into this mix comes Lilith Ritter. Now, Lilith is obviously quite a significant name for anyone familiar with stuff like demon. She's not a demon, but, you know, Lilith is famously a name given to a female demon. And here, Lilith is very much, she is the classic femme fatale of noir cinema. She's a psychiatrist, and I won't say exactly how her and Stanton meet, but she essentially deduces that he's got a lot of theatrical flair for this mentalism, and they could potentially use it to their own advantage in a very, very, immoral, surreptitious way. You go and trick people. I'll find people and set up people that you can fuck with this, and we'll bilk loads of dough out of them, and we'll split it. And so Stanton is torn between a potentially very lucrative operation here, but meanwhile Molly is worried about the future of their relationship, because she thought that Stan was just a kind of like a sweet, mysterious guy, but then she discovers that he doesn't really have anything of a moral compass whatsoever. So yeah, it's just Stanton being highly ambitious and more really ruthless and cruelly exploitative as he goes along, just in this hellscape of just classic noir scum, basically. And I really, really enjoyed this film. It's really, really great. I mean, I know that it's quite obvious that when you go and see anything, it's like, it's good to never be bored. But one thing about Nightmare Alley is every single scene in this film is of the utmost importance. There's always a really, really tightly conveyed bits of exposition that is at the core of every single scene in this movie. Whether you're talking about Willem Dafoe's Clem talking about how he ropes in a geek, or Pete and Xena, David Strathairn and Toni Collette's characters, when they're talking about the exact tricks of their trade, like the code words that they use and all the verbal and visual cues. It's just it's really, really nicely written, and everything has some element of intrigue and some element of suspense. Bradley Cooper, who I'm a fan of, he is very good in the lead role, but it's not really a criticism of his performance, but I think that Bradley Cooper is essentially outshone by other people in the film, particularly Rooney Mara. Rooney Mara as Molly she's just got this really great way, Mara, of communicating someone who's silently deliberating a lot. It's quite emotional without being too saccharine or obvious. You really do feel for her, and I think Mara does a lot of that brilliantly, just with her facial expressions. I loved her in, Steven Soderbergh's Side Effects, which had some very, very great sort of neo-Hitchcockian twists in it. She just has this excellent sort of visage, Rooney Mara, and I think you really buy her as this vulnerable young girl who feels that her prospective husband is actually a piece of shit, and she doesn't know how to get out of it because she's dumped, or is planning to dump, everything that's sort of given her comfort in life so far. She's going to give it all away just for this stranger she's smitten with, and the sort of the eventual bleak realization she has about him. I think Mara does that really, really well, but that's not intended as a criticism of Cooper's performance. I think he is really, really solid as Stanton Carlyle. And Kate Blanchett as Lilith Ritter. I mean, when you want to talk about classic, just evil cinematic femme fatales, she's actually got, she's doing the transatlantic accent. She's got this like really great kind of, atavistic 1940s, 50s hue about her. And she is just somebody whose heart is pumping ice. And again, her matching with Bradley Cooper in this is really, really well done. It's just a really, really solid take on a classic noir, but with Del Toro, who is, I think it's a predominantly faithful adaptation of the novel, but I was reading up on it a little bit, and Del Toro has done minor tweaks in regards to how certain characters meet and what their ultimate fates are. And it makes sense because it's Del Toro giving it his signature dark narrative flourish. Is the reason why Del Toro is such a big name, is because he does have that. His films just have a certain look to them, and there's a idiosyncratic kind of darkness. He's sort of carved out his own way of being grim, essentially. And it fits extremely well here. I just think if you really enjoy, if you like a great tale full of just a morally dubious landscape Really good set design and costume design. Very good performances across the board. It's very well scored. The screenplay is just really, really tight. And every scene is fascinating in its own way. And, a climax that packs a hell of an emotional wallop. I think Nightmare Alley does a really, really good job of that. I think it's a great addition to Guillermo del Toro's back catalogue, and it will definitely be one of the ones that people were talking about decades from now. It's one of the best films out at the moment.
Wow, yeah, I'll have to give that a look.
Really, really. And I mean, the cast as well. I mean, you've got all the people I mentioned, but Richard Jenkins is in it as well. It's got such a top-notch cast. And Holt McElhenney from Mindhunter, and everyone is just on 10 out of 10 form. So yeah, if you can check out Nightmare Alley, man, like it's really worth going out to see.
Fantastic stuff.
Great cinematic experience.
Okay then, so TV of the week. And as promised last week, I said I was going to check out a Korean sci-fi thriller.
Yes, indeed.
Called The Silent Sea. And indeed, I've kept my word, I have. And it's quite an interesting piece of work, actually. Let me give you some setup on it. So it's available on Netflix in the UK at the moment. I believe Netflix worldwide. And it was released on December 24th. 2021, which is very, very recent, but feels like ages ago, actually. Christmas Eve,
yeah.
But there you go. It is new and current, I promise. And let me give you a bit of setup on this. So this opens with a classic sci-fi thriller opening. It's a spaceship upside down on the moon.
Okie dokie.
And everybody is struggling to get out of their seats. There's smoke coming out of panels. There's sparks, all that kind of stuff. This is obviously a spaceship gone terribly wrong. And we see a young woman unstrapping herself from her seat and everybody looking out the windows in horror because not only is this spaceship upside down on the moon, but it is teetering Italian Job style on the edge of a very, very large crevasse. So everybody is in mortal danger right from the very, very get-go. And we get our title sequence and we get our dystopian future, which, of course, every sci-fi show must have.
Indeed.
In this particular dystopian future, the water has virtually run out on planet Earth. The seas are dry, rivers have been reduced to a trickle, and water for the human populace that's left is rationed very, very heavily. And the whole world sort of works on this card system where everybody's got a water rating. And you get given either a blue card, a red card, or a gold card. Blue card doesn't get you very much water. Red card gets you a bit more. Gold card gets you virtually unlimited water. So you've got a bit of sort of class dynamic coming in. Again, sci-fi dystopian thriller territory. But we meet Dr. Song Jian, played by Bae Doona. And she is an astrobiologist working on various different projects. I'm never quite sure. She's basically at the start, she's standing in a lab with test tubes and we go, aha, she is a scientist. But she is approached by a couple of mysterious suited men to essentially recruit her to go on a mission, a very secretive mission for the Korean Space Agency. And she's initially fairly uninterested until they mention that the mission will be going to the moon and it will specifically be going to the Balhae Lunar Research Station, where we quickly learn that her sister was there quite a few years ago, 5 years ago in terms of the show's narrative. And 5 years ago, there was a radioactive accident on the station and everybody died. So she, although not being particularly interested in going to space in general, because she's an astrobiologist, I mean, you're not going to find much biology on the moon, are you? But she's very interested now in going because she wants to find out exactly what happened to her sister. So she's taken off to the Korean Space Agency where she meets the rest of her team going on this mission. We have Han Young-jae, played by Gong Yoo. He's the captain. He's quite a tattooed guy, actually. I don't know. It looks kind of weird for an astronaut that he's absolutely covered in tattoos. He looks a bit more like a Korean gangster. I believe he's played quite a lot of Korean gangsters, but he's the captain of this mission, assembling everybody together. We've got Lee Jun playing Lieutenant Ryu Tae-seok. We got Kim Sung-young playing Dr. Hong Ga-young. Again, the Korean pronunciation. I'm sure I'm getting all of these very, very wrong. I do apologize. She's the ship's doctor, sort of a motley crew, essentially, of space specialists being brought together for this lunar mission. They're all taken into a very shady and smoky room where the details of their mission are revealed to them, although not very much, because they're essentially told, look, we need you to go to this research station. You all know that 5 years ago, everybody died there. Well, we think the radiation levels are safe now. But this station was working on a mysterious research project. And all we need you to do is bring back as many samples as you can of whatever it was they were working on. And so all of the astronauts immediately go, well, hang on, what exactly were they working on? Oh, we're not entirely sure. We don't really know, but we know that these samples are kept in these test tube style canisters. There should be lots of them on the station. We think there's probably some here, here, and here, looking at the holographic map of the station. Essentially, go up, bust in the door, grab as many samples as you can, and get out again. It should be a relatively easy job. So they all strap themselves in on the launch pad. At the very, very last minute, the co-pilot for the mission is replaced. You've got a new guy coming in, and he's very sort of slapdash and a bit of a flyboy kind of thing. And nobody's particularly pleased to suddenly see him turn up on the spaceship. But anyway, those are the orders, and we're all going off regardless. The ship launches. It's very much like a space shuttle, actually, but with sort of a quicker delivery system, like a more advanced space shuttle. So you've got the lander, you've got the 2 rockets on the side and the big fuel tank in the middle. They launch off into space. Just as they're about to land on the moon, there is a problem with the locking mechanism that's holding the fuel tank to the spaceship. It comes undone at the wrong point and essentially sends them free-falling down to the moon's surface, where they, as I said at the very start, land upside down, teetering on the edge of a crevasse. As you would expect, otherwise it would be a very short show. They all manage to escape from the spaceship falling over the edge of the cliff and make their way to this mysterious abandoned lunar base. And once they get inside, once they make it through the airlock, after a lot of, there's a whole sequence with them running out of oxygen. They only just make it because they landed far too far away. Once they make it inside and they're exploring this abandoned station, they find that in one of the entry tunnels, there is a dead body. And they were expecting to find dead bodies there because of this radiation accident. The curious thing about this dead body in this entryway is that he appears to have drowned to death.
Oh.
Dun, 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 indeed. And that's where I will leave it for setup. The Silent Sea. The first few episodes of this are really, really tense. It's really good sci-fi horror, this, for the first few episodes at least. It's very... when I reviewed Squid Game a little while ago.
Yeah.
And I said the thing with Squid Game is it's got a load of ideas in it that you've seen before a million times. It's just in that show's hands, they all felt fresh and new, even though you can go, oh, that's like one of the puzzles from the Saw films or whatever. You could spot points where you go, yeah, I've seen that before. But in that show's hands, it somehow lifts the material. The Silent Sea is very, very much the same thing. It's got a load of sci-fi thriller, sci-fi horror ideas stapled together in ways that normally you'd go, there's this part of you that just wants to throw your hands up and go, I've seen that before. Oh, you're doing this. Oh, you're doing that. But in this show's hands, once again, it feels fresh and zingy. The corridors of this space station, this abandoned space station, is pure Alien. It's pure Ridley Scott. They're sort of white hexagonal corridors, plush interior mixed with glowing lights kind of thing. There's also, they've got the Alien-style motion trackers as well. Literally, it is the Alien's motion tracker. A big box you hold in your hands. It's got little dots on it that beep. And when someone approaches, the beep gets faster and faster and everyone freaks out. It's literally got those in it.
Yeah.
Without giving away the mysteries of the station, what I will say, though, before we go too far down the aliens mythos and the similarities between the two, we're not dealing with a xenomorph here. We're dealing with a couple of ideas, again, treading very carefully, no spoilers, one of which you'll be familiar with if you've watched a fair bit of Asian horror, and another of which I'm fairly sure is actually a new idea and a new concept. So that was quite exciting.
So one of them, I'm just going to take a wild stab in the dark and assume one of them's a ghost.
You wouldn't be...
I'm not expecting you to verify, but...
No, but you wouldn't be a million miles away. I'll say that much. But yeah, so you have got a couple of original ideas going on in here as well, amongst all this sort of sci-fi thriller, very tense milieu, which works really, really well. I was really, really enjoying this. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I've nerded out about sci-fi a million times in this podcast. This is good thriller sci-fi. The performances are excellent all across the board. It's got that lovely, tense paranoia thing that's very reminiscent of The Thing. You remember when I reviewed The Head last year?
Yes.
And I said that essentially Antarctic research bases are sort of spaceships because the outside environment is unsurvivable.
Yeah,
You're all putting these tense corridors and high-tech stuff going on. It's very much the same thing here. Really had me on the edge of my seat. There were certain scenes and certain moments in this where I really wanted to watch through my fingers. I mean, I never do, but when you sort of, it's so tense and it's so palpable, you sort of want to recoil from the screen. Really, really well done.
It's like you were saying, like what you were saying with regards to, like you've seen it all before. Because I think there's, what is it? Like there's only 7 types of story.
Sure.
Is the going thing. But when you know you've got a great talent, it is the way that those stories are told.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of storytelling, yeah, I'd say for definite. In terms of just visual style and the way it's moving the camera to ramp up tension and things like that, it's straight up sci-fi horror that you've seen before. It's just very, very well done.
Yeah.
And I do not have a problem with that in the slightest. And with a nice original concept in the middle of it that actually works really, really well for it. All that paranoid thriller elements. There is a slight caveat with it. The last 5 minutes for me stretched too far. There's obviously I can't say what it is, but there's the last 5 minutes of this where you go, oh, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and then it stops. And I mean, ordinarily I'd chastise a program for doing that and say, well, you've ruined it. But actually, in this show's case, I don't think you have. What I will say is that the last 5 minutes I found stretched believability too far and were, it's a little bitter aftertaste at the end where you suddenly go, yeah, okay, you could have done that better. But it doesn't take anything away from the solidity, really, of the rest of the piece. If you're into your sci-fi stuff, if you're into your creepy tension, if you're into good character performances, and if you're into Korean television and want to see more good stuff, I'd really recommend The Silent Sea. It looks great. I mean, the CGI isn't amazing, but the sets look absolutely fantastic. The performances are top-level quality. There's some nice twists and turns and betrayals and things like that I didn't see coming. It's got a really interesting core sci-fi concept that works well for it, and a horror concept that you've seen before, but it's done very well here. It's nice work, actually. It's some of the best sci-fi I've seen in a while.
I mean, I'm glad to hear that it doesn't ruin it by your estimation, but it's always been a pet peeve of mine, as I imagine it is yours as well, when you have creators who go, okay, well, we have the audience, they have an outset suspension of disbelief. Let's see how far we can push that. It is a bit irksome.
There is the last 5 minutes suddenly pushes the suspension of disbelief to that. Oh, okay, that's actually, there's a lot of unbelievable things that happen in it.
The credulity band snaps.
Yeah, there's a lot of unbelievable things in it, but they're woven into the plot enough where you can go, oh, okay, so that's what we're dealing with here. I'll jump over that barrier that you've given me. The last 5 minutes gives you a barrier where you go, nah. But I have to say, it doesn't ruin the overall experience of the piece. It's a little bit sad that it's got that deflatory note at the end of it, but otherwise, it's really, really good, tense, sci-fi, thriller, horror-y stuff. And I'm a big fan of that, and I really enjoyed The Silent Sea. So, yeah, give it a go.
Sounds cool. Yeah.
Okay, then to finish off this week, bit of trivia. I've done The Moon.
The Moon?
The Moon, yes.
Isn't that how Noel Fielding says it in The Mighty Boosh? I am the moon.
The moon, yeah.
I am made of alabaster. Or something.
I never really got on with The Mighty Boosh, but yeah.
I find some of it quite funny.
Everybody when I was younger thought it was the funniest thing ever, and I was never convinced. But anyway, I'm not reviewing The Mighty Boosh. I'm about to deliver some trivia on the moon. The moon began with an explosive collision. The prevailing idea is that the moon was formed in a violent event between the proto-Earth, an early-stage Earth that was much bigger than it is today, and an object labelled Thea, about the size of Mars, explains Robert Massey, Deputy Executive Director of the Royal Astronomical Society. Debris was ejected into space and then coalesced to form the moon. Modern research seems to confirm the moon is made from material from the early Earth's crust. Dubbed the Giant Impact Hypothesis, this collision is believed to have happened 4.5 billion years ago, and would have been 100 million times larger than the event which wiped out the dinosaurs.
Holy shiznay.
It was a really big bang. Yeah.
It was a big old bastard of bang.
Next time you look up at the moon, think to yourself, that was a piece of Earth that broke off and then coalesced.
Bloody hell. First time ever hearing that. I like to think I'm relatively informed.
Well, there you go. It's my job to find trivia you don't know. This is something interesting as well, because you always assume the moon's really, really cold, right? But apparently, surface temperatures can reach boiling point. Because the moon has no protective atmosphere, the surface experiences extreme temperatures, from incredibly cold on the far night side and above boiling on the sunny near side, explains Massey. According to NASA, the moon's temperature can span from 123 degrees Celsius to minus 233 degrees. Its mean surface temperature is 107 degrees Celsius in the day and minus 153 at night.
Wow.
So really bloody hot or really cold, very little in between.
If there were any inhabitants, they'd probably adopt the English way. It's too fucking hot. It's too fucking cold. Never satisfied.
Yeah, it is the UK.
Yeah. The moon is the United Kingdom.
You can never get a mean temperature. Americans never believe you on that, by the way. They always try and make a joke about it's always raining in the UK. It's like, yeah, but we do get hot summers. They go, no, you don't. And then you show them like, oh, wow, yeah, for 2 weeks, you had like 40-degree temperatures.
Yeah.
And then it does go back to raining all the time, being very miserable. This is a nice one. Moon dirt smells. A big question facing the NASA team planning the Apollo 11 moon landing was, what would the moon's surface be like? Would the lander's legs touch down on firm ground or sink into something soft? The surface turned out to be solid, but the real surprise was that the moon had a smell. Moon soil is extremely clingy and hard to brush off. So when Armstrong and Aldrin returned to the lunar module and repressurized it, lunar dirt that had clung to the men's suits entered the cabin and began to emit an odor. The astronauts reported that it smelt like burning wet fireplace ashes or like the air after a fireworks show. Scientists would never get the chance to investigate just what the crew was smelling. While moon soil and rock samples were sent to labs in sealed containers, once they were opened back on Earth, the smell was gone. Somehow, as Charles Fishman, author of One Giant Leap, says, the smell of the moon remained on the moon.
Damn.
So the moon smells of gunpowder, apparently, if there was any air to smell it.
That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Pretty annoying that it's, it just totally vanished by the time that it reached
You'd
the
think
testing facility.
being put into a sealed container, you think that it would make it back, wouldn't you? But apparently not.
Don't fuck with space.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about your rules.
The moon is shrinking. This is one of those alarmist facts. Yes, don't worry though. You'll see what I mean by the end of this segment. The moon is shrinking. After reviewing moonquake data collected between 1969 and 1977, scientists determined that approximately 25% of the moon's seismic activity was generated by released energy from scarps, or stair-step cliffs on the moon's surface. This activity comes from the contraction of the moon's crust as it cools, which has caused it to shrink by about 150 feet over the last several hundred million years.
Wow.
So, yeah, I actually looked up a little bit more on this. It's something like 1 centimeter a year, if you were to work that out. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry.
It's got a while to go.
It's getting a little bit smaller. We've got far bigger problems in the meantime. I wouldn't worry too much about the moon.
Imagine people out in the street with placards, the moon is shrinking.
Yeah.
What is Don Johnson going to do about the moon shrinking?
Everybody knows that conspiracy nut in your local bar. Like every bar's got one, right? That's the sort of thing they come in and go, well, I wouldn't worry about all that. The moon's shrinking. You go, oh, fuck off.
Well, I mean, I've met people who think that the landings were all a big hoax. And
one of my least favourite conspiracy theories. That I always feel the need to argue on that one, and you never get anywhere.
I always love how Mitchell and Webb sort of took to task the logistics, where it's like, you do know that faking a moon landing would be a lot more expensive than actually going to the moon.
Yeah.
And there would actually be no net gain from faking it. It would just be very, very expensive.
It's all the classic stuff as well. If there's no air on the moon, how does the flag stand up? Because it's got a rod that goes across the top of it. And you can literally go and look at the flags in museums if you like. So, and why is it moving? Well, because it was put up and momentum's a thing. That's the thing. It drives me nuts.
Their lives are not interesting enough, so they have to cling to this fucking silly bullshit.
Sadly so. JFK was more focused on beating the Soviets than in space. In public, President John F. Kennedy had boldly pledged that the United States would set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. But secret tapes of Kennedy's discussions would later reveal that in private, JFK was less interested in space exploration than in one-upping the Soviets. In a 1962 meeting with advisors and NASA administrators, JFK confessed, "I'm not that interested in space," but he was interested in winning the Cold War. Just months after JFK's inauguration, the Soviet Union had sent the first man into space. Kennedy asked his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, how the US could score a win against the Soviets. One of the best ways to show US dominance, Johnson reported back, was by sending a manned mission to the moon. Johnson, in fact, had long been a space advocate, saying in 1958, "Control of space is control of the world." What I like about that little piece there is that all the way through, it's only you find out Lyndon B. Johnson was actually for the space mission. You go, oh, wow, so he actually was interested in the science. No. He was just interested in total world domination.
Is it? I mean, it's again, even right now as we speak, is it ever going to not be kicking off between the Americans and the Russians?
No, I think we're in, well, at least in our lifetime.
It's a long old story now, man. It's fucking tedious.
Yeah. A lunar eclipse saved Christopher Columbus. The Nebra sky disk, a bronze artifact dating back to 1600 BC, which was discovered in Germany, is the first known human map to include an image of the moon, and is a reminder of how much the moon has influenced human history. The moon even saved the explorer Christopher Columbus from starvation. After consulting his almanac, Columbus used the lunar eclipse of February 29, 1504, to frighten the native Arawak Indians on the island of Jamaica into giving him and his crew food. According to his son Ferdinand, at the sight of the eclipse, the Arawaks, with great howling and lamentations, came running away from every direction to the ships laden with provisions.
Well, he's a lovely man, isn't he?
I was just about to say, lovely man, Christopher Columbus. Yeah. I mean, I know his crew was starving and all that kind of stuff, but frightening native peoples by telling them the world's ending because you know there's going to be a lunar eclipse. That's a particular level of bastardry, isn't it?
Well, yes, and he's an apex bastard who is celebrated annually, which is always leaves a sour taste in the mouth, but there you go.
And my last, I said that like I was really, that was a nice thing you just said. I apologize. I'll do a more serious one. I'll splice that in later.
He was a bastard.
No one will notice. Yeah. He was a real bastard. Yeah. And my last fact here. The pace is minuscule, but there's no doubt the moon is slowly receding from the Earth. During their mission, Apollo 11 astronauts placed a laser-ranging retroreflector on the moon's surface, which helps measure the distance between Earth and the moon. The retroreflector, a series of mirrors that reflect laser pulses, shows that the moon is retreating at a rate of about 1 inch per year. It's gradually leaving us, the moon.
So it's shrinking and it's getting further away.
It's shrinking and it's running away. And if that doesn't say everything you need to know about the state of the Earth and humanity, I don't know. Even the fucking moon's, pissing off.
Yeah, I've had enough of this shit.
Yeah.
Look at all these cunts.
You can technically wave at the moon as it goes. It's just, 1 inch a year. So. But yes, that brings us to the end of our free podcast this week. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to go and record our premium episode now. This week, Liam, you've got a load of extra takes to get through, I think.
Yeah, I got a few to bring up.
We probably won't get through all of them, but what have you got on your list?
I rewatched Steven Soderbergh's Unsane, which is a very interesting film. I'm going to be talking about that. There's also a little one from 2018 called A Vigilante, which is quite an interesting little independent sort of crime drama character study. And also one of my big favourites, the 70s BBC Play for Today, Just a Boys Game, which I believe I watched with you one time.
Yes.
Which is set in the slums of Greenock and deals with the repercussions of living your life as a double-eyed bastard. And that's always been a very, very dear film to me. So yeah, just going to be looking at those. And yes, and I believe you have something as well.
Yes, I have been, and I completely and utterly shocked Liam with this when I told him the other week, but I have been rewatching Game of Thrones. All of it.
I was shocked because it goes from absolutely amazingly brilliant and stupendously good to what?
Yeah, well, my partner had only seen it once and she was quite interested in watching it again because, on subsequent viewings, it's one of those shows that has so many layers that you got a little bit more out of it and could see things lining up beforehand. But I thought it'd be actually quite interesting to do because I think most people haven't watched it since the very disappointing finale. And when you watch it back in a binge watching sense, does it work? Has it changed? Has it aged better than you think? I've got some things to say on that.
I'm very interested to hear them.
So we're going to be having a fair bit of Game of Thrones chat. If you're interested in any of that, please do check out cinementalist.com for a link to our Patreon page. You can follow us on Twitter at CinementalCast, and you can follow Liam at
the Movies at Wacko Jacko's Flicks.
And yeah, I think it wraps up for this week, mate.
Yes, thank you very much for listening, people. Always good to have you tune in. And yeah, if we don't see you on the premium, we'll see you next time.
Awesome stuff. See you soon, guys.